Today's lesson is how to build harmonized major scales. So by taking a major scale and then turning each one of those notes into a triad to make a harmonized major scale. Follow the lesson for free and just pick up all the tips. We're going to be talking a lot about harmonized major scales. But if you're interested, this is number 89 to number 96 in my book, Exploring the Fretboard, 100 Exercises for Intermediate Guitar. And there's a link for that in the description. So the way I've laid it out here is that the first exercise is always a preparation for the next exercise. So the first thing we do is just learn that major scale and the triad shapes involved. And then we play that major scale and make triads built on each one of the major scale notes. This might seem very complicated to an early beginner student, but once you actually understand the concept, and once you do the preparation followed by the actual harmonized scale, you will find that actually it's a very easy pattern to learn and memorize. Reading the music is actually almost not necessary once you understand how the pattern works and the shapes involved, for which there are only 3 shapes. Then playing it is quite easy. But getting over that bump of just like being able to understand the concept involved is what we're really tackling today. I'll also say is that if a lot of the theory just goes right over your head, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. It's not the intention of the book to be a theory book or a fretboard harmony book. Your main task today is to play the exercises and to become comfortable and then move on to the next exercises. I'll also give you a tip is that I would like you to say the note names out loud when you're practicing it, at least once or twice. But I know that in the harmonized major scale, that's a lot of notes and a lot of repetitions, so you don't have to always do that, but you should try doing it a couple of times at least. Many of you might find these exercises quite challenging, but my main tips are to really, really work the preparation exercise. Know that single string scale super well, and learn it with the fingering I've included for the scale, but also play it with just one finger because part of the exercise is visualizing these things on the fretboard without specifically visualizing them with specific fingers. You need to be flexible by knowing where those notes occur but then attaching different shapes to them or different fingerings to them. So it's developing that part of your brain that can visualize your guitar but without just like fixed finger muscle memory. It's actually knowing where those notes are and visualizing it. So we're developing that. And also, however long it takes you is just fine. If you want to memorize just one measure of the harmonized major scale first, you can do that for a couple days. And then add the next one and do that for a few days. And whatever speed makes you comfortable learning this, that's all you have to do. It doesn't matter how long it takes you, as long as you're developing that part of your brain that can visualize these things and make these connections between musical patterns. Let's just dive in, and I think a lot of things will become clear as we work through the material. So number 89. This is a B-flat major scale on the 3rd string, which prepares you for the next exercise. So we start with our first finger on B flat. So there's the scale. And then the shapes involved are a major shape. You can play it solid if you like. A minor shape, so we lower the 3rd. A diminished shape where we lower the 5th. So those are that's the scale that we're going to use and the shapes involved. Just play it, don't worry too much. It's going to become clear on the next exercise. So number 90 is a B-flat harmonized major scale. So that scale we learned, that is going to be the bass note of each triad. So that those bass notes are the scale, and we're building triads off of each bass note. So obviously, the better you know that scale, the easier this will be. Now, there's only 3 shapes that we need to know that we use as we climb up that scale. And the order of chords are major, then minor, then minor, then major, then major, minor, diminished, and major. So I used 3 shapes there, and I just made the shape over each note from the major scale. So again, you have a major scale, and then you're building chords off of each one. And whenever you have a harmonized major scale, the order is always the same for the chords. It's major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. So let's just do that exercise one more time, and I'll say the chords. And remember, you don't even have to really read each note in the shape. You just have to know the shape. I want you to actually read it as well a couple times, and I also want you to say the note names a couple times so that you actually know the notes involved. But when you initially learn this exercise, just realize that it's quite easy if you just make the shapes, either this major shape, the minor shape, or the diminished shape. So using that scale as the bass note, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major. If you find the diminished chord awkward, don't worry about holding all the notes, just play them one at a time. That's why I wrote it in broken triads, in case it's technically difficult for some students. So that's the basic idea. Now we're going to do this in different keys and on different strings, but the concept will be the same each time. We learn a scale, and then we learn the triads based on each note of that scale. And with major scales, it's always the same order. It's always major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. Every single time. So I think that even if you don't completely understand when you do exercise 89 and 90, we're going to do it a whole bunch more times, and I think you'll start to realize, oh, the pattern is the same each time. All I have to know is the shapes involved, and then I just use those shapes with that major scale. So exercise 91 is an F major scale on the 4th string, which prepares you for the next exercise. And the shapes involved will be a major or the minor, or the diminished, which would involve an open string, but I just left that out this time. Okay, exercise. So you have to learn that scale really well because that's the bass notes we're going to be using for each triad. So in exercise 92, we're building our harmonized scale off of that scale pattern. So we have major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. So again, if we do it with just one finger, maybe it's more clear. I'll emphasize the major scale note. So yeah, as long as you know those shapes, then you're just making those those shapes over top of the major scale. Let's move on to the next one. Exercise 93. This is a D major scale on the 5th string, preparing you for the harmonized major scale that comes next. And the shapes involved are major, minor, and diminished. A little bit of a stretch for the diminished, but only gets used once. So, reminder, for exercise 94, we're using that major scale but we're building chords off of each one. And the pattern is always the same. It's major chord followed by a minor chord, followed by a minor chord, major, major, minor, diminished, major. You just need to know the new shapes. Some of the playing in this scale will be awkward up here, but again, don't feel free to not hold the notes. You can just play the individual notes. Don't worry about how clean it is performance-wise or the speed at which you're playing. So we have major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major. It's a little awkward up there, so again, just tap the notes individually if you have to. Okay, exercise 95. Again, we have a scale and the triad shapes, followed by the harmonized major scale. So number 95 is an A flat major scale on the 6th string. And the shapes involved look exactly like the previous shapes. Let's see, A flat. There's your major shape. There's your minor shape. And then we would lower the 5th for the next one, which results in an open string in this case, but it's just lowering that first finger down one. In this key, the 5th ends up being a double flat. If you're not familiar with that, it's just 2 semitones down. But again, if you know the shape, you don't really need... I mean, I want you to read the notes and I want you to say the note names out loud sometimes. But when you're initially learning it, you just need to know the shape involved. And then you're just attaching that. So, number 96 is that A flat harmonized major scale. So we have major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major. Again, a little bit awkward, so just play them individually if you have to. Like I said, the more that you work on the preparation exercise and the more you're able to just visualize where that note, the first note occurs, then you're just making shapes based on each one of those notes. And I do realize that this will be quite challenging for some students, at least at first. So my advice is really simple, is just take it really slow. Really, really know the preparation exercise. And when you play the harmonized major scale, if you have to learn it one measure at a time, just one chord at a time to become comfortable, then do that. And spend as much time as you need. Like if it takes you, a couple days, fine. If it takes you a couple weeks, fine. If it takes you 2 months, that's fine. But really just know that scale, know those notes, and then attach those shapes to those notes. This kind of connection building exercises is not only great for understanding a little bit of music theory, but that's not really the intention. It's also about conceptualizing your fretboard in different ways. Even though you learn a major scale with one fingering, you use a different fingering when you have to use it with chords. So it's kind of really becoming comfortable with visual aspects of your instrument as well. Sometimes we learn things with certain fingers on certain frets, and we really memorize those fingers being on certain frets. And when we use a different finger, we get disoriented. But what you really want to know is that those notes are fixed, right? And you want to be able to visualize your fretboard in numerous ways, because the more you can visualize your fretboard, the less you'll be attached to one fingering. You can be much more flexible because you have a really fixed idea of how the guitar works and how those notes get laid out. These kinds of exercises will be quite taxing, but they will help you develop that part of your brain that can visualize the guitar in these ways.